What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have the showcase for Violet Parr. So let's get straight into it. So I have Violet Parr thanks to the Kabam creator program. I'm basically part of this program where I get to test and showcase these guardians every single month for the community to make videos, make content on them, give feedback. At the end of the time that's been allowed for me to have these guardians, they get taken away from my account, so I do not benefit. We're just going to get straight into this showcase. We have the 5-star rank 5 Violet here, and we're just going to go over her abilities real quick. At the start of each combat, all enemies are inflicted with a minus 40% critical damage debuff for the remainder of the encounter, or until Violet is defeated. Heavy attacks inflict a shock dealing 3% damage per second for 10 seconds. So in total that is 30% damage. Basic attacks have a 10% chance to grant allies a 20% defense buff that lasts for 10 seconds, and it stacks up 3 times, so up to 60%. If Violet's target is inflicted with a shock, her basics have a 35% chance to grant a defense buff. So that's basically her core ability. She has shock, she has defense buff, and minus 40% critical damage debuff. So she's given minus 40% critical damage as well as getting defense buffs and also applying shock to enemies. So moving over to her special ability, Violet grants a force field to all allies. The strength of a force field is equal to 50% of Violet's defense at the time of creation. Force fields absorb basic and heavy projectiles and will last for 10 seconds or until destroyed. So basically the force field is a protective barrier that takes damage before armor or health and destroy projectiles on impact, preventing the target from being hit. Damage resistance is ignored when force field absorbs damage. Whilst a force field is active, the protected ally gains 100% resistance to shock and burn damage. So 100% resistance towards shock and burn. Immune when you have the force field up. So that's a good little bit of utility to have when facing someone like Magnificent with her burn. For the first 5 seconds whilst the force field is active, it grants 2% armor per second to the ally. So you get armor as well, tons of armor. And you will see when we get into some gameplay just how quickly this armor applies to you. And it just makes her such a good support. So we're just going to move on to her signature ability. Violet grants a force field to allies at the start of each combat, and armor granted from force fields is increased by an additional 2%. This is so important. Every time you go into a new room, so say an encounter has 3 different rooms, you're going to get the force field instantly every time you go into a new room. So every time you start a new room, you're just going to have the shield activated again, and you're just going to gain so much armor. The strength of Violet's force field is increased by an additional 10% of her defense. This is at level 1, so we go all the way up to level 100. So at level 100, the strength of Violet's force field is increased by additional 50% of her defense instead of 10%, so it goes up 40%. So that's really good to have. It's a good signature ability to unlock, very important when you're in fights. So we're just going to move on to her talents. So moving on to her talents, we're going to start with the advanced ones. The basic one is just more attack and health. It's just the same for all guardians. So we're going to start with the first advanced one. Once per encounter, whilst at or below 50% HP, Violet gains a 17% defense buff that lasts for the rest of the encounter. She also gains an invisible buff for 15 seconds, greatly lowering enemies' aggression towards her. Now the biggest issue with Violet is that she doesn't have that much health. So if she gets focused by enemies, she's going to die very fast. So having less aggression towards her, it just makes her so much better. She won't get hindered by enemies. They'll just focus on all the other guardians in the fight. So you want to have a good tank guardian. Sully actually works really well with Violet. A good combo. Sully has tons of health and he's just going to gain armor as well. At the same time, each time he goes into a new room, he gains armor. And he's just going to get additional armor from the force field. And all the enemies are just going to focus on him. You just want Violet to be in the corner, not being annoyed by any enemies, because she will die very fast. So having this, it stops enemies from focusing towards her. So moving on to the next one. Violet's critical damage debuff removes an additional 31% critical damage from enemies. This is great to have. So in the next one, we have when a force field is destroyed or expires, enemies are inflicted with a shock dealing 5% damage per second for 10 seconds. So every time a force field expires, all enemies get shocked. You can get probably 2 to 3 force fields per room if you're lucky, and they deactivate, so that's tons and tons of shock. Every single room, you're just going to be shocking them all to death. And then shocks inflicted by other allies deal an additional 7% damage, so more shock damage. Very good. And then moving on to the elite talent, when a force field is applied to an ally, adjacent enemies are knocked back. So every force field that is active, all adjacent enemies are knocked back, so more knockback, which is really good to have. Allies resist 22% basic and heavy damage from tank and melee enemies whilst force fields are active. Melee enemies are just so annoying, they always just attack you, they're so aggressive, so minus 22%. Once the force field is active, it takes longer for the force field to actually get broken or destroyed. So there's some good ones here you want to focus on. Now moving on to Violet's bio and her traits. She's a medium guardian, she's stealthy, gravity defying, lawful and Pixar. Now she doesn't have many traits that are really useful at the moment in terms of towers, but there might be a Pixar tower coming very soon, so if there is, she's definitely going to be great for it. But overall, if I have to rate her just by her abilities, she looks really good. We're going to go into the gameplay now and you're about to see how good she really is, and trust me, you're going to want to watch this. So we're in a fight now, we got Sully, and as you can see, we're gaining our shield already from the force field. The first 5 seconds of the fight, every time you activate the force field, you gain 4% armor because of this special ability, increases it by 2%. So in total, every time the force field activates, that's 20% armor in total. That's not including when you use your specials. We're going to use our special right now, and as you can see, we got our force field active again, and we're gaining armor once again. Now you can see how much Sully is actually gaining. He's gaining 130 per second. It's because he has a much larger health pool, so you can just see that this guy's going to be a tank, and what you want Sully to do is you want him to go into the fight and you just want him to get hit. And because of the talent, Violet has an invisibility buff, so she's not going to be targeted as much. So you can just see, we just pop the special, get the force field activated again with resistance towards tank and melee guardians by 22%, and all we're doing is just hitting into our opponents, destroying them, and every time we get the force field activated, we just gain all that armor. And you can see how much armor we actually have at the moment. We nearly have 4 on every single one of our guardians, and you can see Ariel getting 90 per second, and it's just relentless. My first opinions on Violet is she is so good for all content. She's definitely someone you need to rank up ASAP. She is unreal, she is broken. She's on the boss now, once again, because she's a 4-star plus and she has her signature ability. She automatically starts with a force field every room she goes in. The signature ability is so important. You need to make sure you have it activated. Make sure you get her towards a 4-star and put a lot of SIGs into her. She's definitely worth it. Being able to go into a new room and instantly gaining the force field and gaining 20% armor is so good, and it applies to all of your guardians. It's so important to have. You can just see how much health we've lost. We've lost hardly any health. The only person that's lost health is Sully, and that's because of bleed. Violet's unreal, absolutely incredible. And speaking of incredible, Violet is also really good paired with Mr. Incredible as a tank duo. Having someone like Mr. Incredible works just like Sully. Because Violet has that invisible buff, enemies are not going to be as aggressive towards her, and they're just not going to attack her. So we're now in a new fight here. We're using Baymax as well as Gaston, and Baymax is such a good pair to use with Violet. So we're just going to see here, we start the fight, and for the first 5 seconds, because of the defense, we're just gaining armor. And then we still got the force field activated for the remainder 5 seconds. And this is every time you go into a new room. So you can see we've just finished the room here, and now we go into the second room, and once again we start with the force field and we gain that armor. And the armor is just relentless, it's constant, it works in any situation. Just make sure you have a good tank guardian. Now who's good to pair with Violet? Now there's many guardians you can pair. Simba's really good with Violet, but also Mr. Incredible, Sully, Baymax are great options. If you have one of them and pair them with Violet, such a good thing to do. So make sure if you have one of those guardians, pair them up. Now which enemies does this guardian counter? So what does Violet counter? Violet is excellent counter to ranged guardians like Magnificent, Zerg, Tron and Hades. Her force field prevents their damage and effect from applying to her allies. So if you go into a fight and a boss is one of these guardians, she's going to be a great option to use. Now what is Violet's weakness? Violet is weak in 1v1s against damage dealers such as Aladdin, Ariel, Snow White and Hercules. So if you can time it right, she's weak to armor removal effects from Buzz, Goofy and Zurg. You've got to be careful when you're going against these Guardians because she is very weak. Once she's in a 1v1 situation, her health is not great, so if she gets hit, she does die very fast. So make sure you have her covered, and because of the invisibility buff, other enemies are just not going to be as aggressive towards her, so they're going to be focusing on your other tank Guardians and then your other melee Guardians, and they're just going to group towards them and take all the damage. So the force field is really good to have. It prevents the damage, and also it's kind of safety net just in case someone like Ariel gets really close to Violet and does deal some damage, because you're resistant 22% to melee Guardians. But overall, Violet is an amazing Guardian to have. By far, she's one of my favourite Guardians in the game. When I first started playing her, I just knew that she was ridiculous. The amount of armor she gains is just unreal. She's one of those Guardians that you don't really notice in the fight, but you notice the amount of armor you're gaining throughout the fight. It just adds up so fast. And overall, Violet, if I have to rate her out of 10, she's a 9 out of 10 by far. If you have her, rank her up. Definitely take her up. She's amazing. So my final thoughts on Violet is she's one of the best support Guardians in the game. She's one of the best armor gainers in the game. She's one of the best Guardians in the game. I can't lie. As soon as I started playing her, I just knew she's so good in so many different situations. Her invisibility buff just makes her so much better, because obviously she has her weaknesses with her health, but that invisibility buff, that talent, just makes her from a 7 to 8 out of 10 to a 9. It instantly puts her up. Her best part about her is, of course, her signature ability. So if you do have her as like a 2-star to 3-star, you want to focus on getting her to a 4-star, because that signature ability is game changing. Every room you go into, you instantly start with that force field as well. 2% more armor you get, so you get that armor quicker. But overall, fantastic job from Kabam. I wish I could keep her, but obviously the Guardian goes, so yeah, very sad about that. But I'm going to go for her. I'm going to save up all my XP motes, and we're going to try and get her as a 4-star or maybe a 5-star. So that is it for today's video. If you did like it, please leave a like and subscribe for more. I'm going to be uploading my Dory showcase very soon, so keep an eye on the channel. But that is it for today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.